Hi friends, so I'm super excited to be back for my 4 series live videos. So last Monday, I talked about presence. So I'm talking about the 4 steps that really helped me stop binge eating, that helped me stop using food as a coping mechanism and change my relationship to food and my body, really. So if you missed the last video, please go check it out. It's still on my feed. Because I'm kind of going to be building off of that. So once we have presence, and I went deeper into this in the last video, we start to build this awareness of these different parts of ourselves and these things we've been suppressing or rejecting in ourselves, right? So whether that is painful emotions, things like anger, sadness, shame, unworthiness, but also different parts of ourselves that we feel make us unlovable, right? So maybe it's the part of us that seeks attention in a certain way, or the part of us that is a perfectionist or a people pleaser, or I've even had clients where it was like their inner child part of themselves. They had fear around because they thought it made them weak, right? So whatever it is, all these things start to come to the surface, and then it's like, now what, right? And that's where this second step comes in that really helped me, and it's acceptance. When we are fighting things or rejecting things or like trying to push it away, right, we are creating disconnection within ourselves. And when we have disconnection within ourselves, we aren't able to access our body. And then we can't do any of this work at all, right? So I'll give you an example of this. A big part of my journey has been the worthiness wound, and we all have this. We all, to some extent, feel unworthy, not good enough, right? I'm sure you can relate with those stories. And for a long time, I thought I was doing the work around it. When it would come up, I would be in my mind though, and I would be, trying to change the story and shift the beliefs and doing that work. And I kept telling myself, oh, I'm doing the work. But really, I wasn't fully accepting it. I wasn't accepting that part of myself that feels unworthy. And it kept showing up, right? Because what we resist persists. So if we aren't dealing with it, it's going to show up in some way. Often this looks like, when we're suppressing emotions, it looks like showing up as a physical manifestation with our health or something like that, right? So when I finally had that realization and I moved into acceptance of that part of me that feels unworthy, what that did was that allowed me to feel it, because I built that connection automatically. It's like we're connected again, and I was able to move into fully feeling it in my body and not identify with it, right? Just feel it in my body, but not let the mind go into story and identify with it and say I am unworthy. And I'll get to that in a second. But as soon as I did that, what it did was create space in my body. It created space. I released some of those feelings of unworthiness. And then with that space, I felt more light. I felt more expansive, and I could bring in a higher vibrating emotion that I wanted to feel. Hi, Vicky. Thanks for the heart. So I forget what I was going to get to now. See, this is what happens when I get talking. But I like to relate it to this. Think of yourself as like a 1,000-piece puzzle, right? And that, if we're talking about unworthiness, right, that one piece of us is like one piece. So we still have 999 other pieces. But if we're not including that piece and accepting that piece, the puzzle's not whole. It's not complete, right? So often we feel like we're not whole. We feel like something's missing, but it's because we're not accepting all parts of ourselves, right? As soon as we do, we're whole and we get access to everything. This comes up a lot with body acceptance, this piece around accepting everything. My clients, and I get it because I was there too, they don't want to accept their body where it's at, right? Because they feel if they accept, that's going to equal complacency, and they think they're just going to go and eat a whole bunch of things and gain weight. There's so much fear around gaining weight, right? And we were talking about this in the certification call that I mentor in tonight, about how it's so important that we choose our mental health over our body image, because we're going to stay stuck if we don't. We're not going to be able to transform and shift our relationship with food in our body if we're so focused on the body image. We need to choose our mental health, right? So we have to let go of that fear of gaining weight, which I get is terrifying because so many of us attach our worth to our weight. But what happens when we accept our body where it is, right? Like I said, we build that connection. We can't do any of this work if we're disconnected. So if we're not accepting any part of ourselves, any part of our internal experience that our body has, then we're creating that disconnection. And then we don't have access to things like our intuition, right? Our own inner guidance system. We stay stuck up in here, and this is rooted in fear. So you can imagine how if we're constantly making decisions out of fear, the results of our life, right? When we can connect to our body and our intuition, we can make decisions from love, which is based on feeling, which is body-based, right? So much more powerful. We also don't have connection to our inner child. And our inner child is a piece of us that is like operating in the background and running the show, and we don't even know it until we start to do that work, right? And the behaviors that we don't like are often coming from our inner child, the triggers coming from our inner child, right? And for us to be able to mother her properly, we need that connection into our body. Our emotions, right? If we want to heal, we need to feel. But if we keep suppressing those emotions and keeping disconnection in our body, we're not going to be able to feel. And this is the thing. When we actually just feel emotions in our body, rather than identifying with them, and I talked about this in the last video too, so often we think we're feeling, but what we're feeling is the suffering our mind creates. When we start to build that presence and that awareness, we start to notice how many stories our minds have and how much suffering that creates for us that we don't need to feel. When we're able to connect to our body and actually start to feel, and don't get me wrong, this is a process, and it's like we get to be so gentle and compassionate with ourselves, and we don't force it. Our body's on her own healing timeline, so we show up for ourselves, we do the work, and we just let it unfold as it's meant to. So when we actually just feel in our body, it moves through so much faster, and it releases, and we get to access the other end of the spectrum, right? Because when we're not feeling, like, we have this spectrum of emotionality, and they're neither good nor bad. We want to find neutrality with it all, and I'm going to talk more about that in my next video next Monday. But when we allow ourselves to go into the pain, if we go in a little bit, we start to access more of the joy and the lightness. And then the deeper we go, we access more of this, right? So it's not like we can choose either or. It's numbness, or we start to open ourselves up to both, right? The yin and yang, the black and white, the feminine, masculine, whatever you want to call it. Like, there's always opposing sides in life, right? That's just the way it is. That's the way life works. So we can't have one without the other. Yeah, what else was I going to say about this? This is just, it's such a powerful, powerful piece of this work. And it's, we can bypass it. We can tell ourselves we're doing the work and feeling it. But it takes that deep, deep awareness and being so honest with ourselves of like, am I actually fully accepting this? Am I actually fully accepting this part of myself? Am I fully accepting this experience, right? And you can ask yourself every day, how much more can I accept? How much more acceptance can I move into with what I'm experiencing internally? Because we can't transform or change anything until we've accepted it. And that's the thing, going back to the body too, but any behaviors, right? Any parts of ourselves. Because if we're not accepting it, then we're not able to get into a relationship with it, and we can't change anything we're not in relationship with, right? We can avoid and we can fight it, but that's never going to transform it, right? Like I said, what we resist persists. It's going to keep showing up in one way or another. So if we move into acceptance, then we can do the work of truly transforming it. So many women I work with, if we're going back to talking about body acceptance, right? They want to change their bodies because they don't feel themselves. They don't feel light and expansive and how they want to feel. They just know it's not them. And often this is the case, right? If we're using food as a coping mechanism and we're binge eating, we are eating a lot more than our body actually needs. So of course we're going to gain weight, right? We're going to have that emotional weight creates physical weight on our body. It's not always the case, but often it is. And so they want to change their body, and they've been doing it from this place of hate for so many years, and like forcing and controlling. But when they move into this place of accepting exactly where their body is, they can get into a relationship with their body. Then they can start to feel what's going on under the food, right? And do that work so that they don't need that behavior anymore. But we get so distracted with the behavior, and we try to focus on that and change that, and that just never works. So I think that's all I have to say about acceptance. It's been so powerful for me, and I continue to go deeper and deeper into it with different aspects, which we always get to do with this work, right? So, yes, I hope you join me next Monday for the next part of this session. And if you have any questions at all, please do feel free to ask. I would love to answer any of your questions, and we'll see you on Monday. Have a great night.